What's up, everybody? It's the Fantasy Effect. Today we're doing episode 52, talking about players who struggled in 2023. We are brought to you by Dynasty Theory in partnership with Dynasty Daddy, and as always, Fantasy Football Infinity. You may notice that we are down a member again today, but I am joined with Holler. How's it going, man?
Good, man. We can't get all three of us together. My goodness,
I know it. It's
something
tough.
keeps coming up.
It's like three of us, have families and jobs and
Yeah,
kids and stuff. Like it gets
things
in the
to
way.
do. Yeah, but yeah, I'm doing well. I feel like it's only been what 10 days in the new year, and I feel like it's been like the longest 10 days.
Oh yeah, dude. That first week back last week at work was a slog. I was
Yep.
like, oh, I had a week off of work, and now I'm like forgot how to function.
Yep, I feel you.
We actually had a decent amount of news over the last few days. So the regular season ended in the NFL, which usually means that some teams who didn't make the playoffs are looking for new directions here. Let's get into some of these firings. So first and foremost, I think the one that everyone's kind of rejoicing over was the Atlanta Falcons decided to part ways with Arthur Smith. So is this finally free Kyle Pitts and Drake London? Like, are we gonna get the Kyle Pitts breakout finally?
I do think it's kind of twofold. I think it really will depend what they do at quarterback. I do know,
Sure.
I'm sure that something different is happening. I've seen Jaden Daniels. We talked about it on the pod a couple of weeks ago as well. That I personally would like Jaden Daniels there, but I think first and foremost, it's going to be interesting to see who they bring in, and then it will be interesting to see where they go at quarterback. We've talked about it before as well. There's not free agents, so they're going to have to go the route of the draft. So we'll see what they do. They're in a good spot to pick one. So we'll see. They may move up. I saw a couple different mocks that they moved up. So we'll see. This one I'm excited about because there's a lot of fantasy assets there's three of them, not a lot, but there's three of them, three big ones.
Three really good ones though.
Yes.
Bijan, Drake London, and Kyle Pitts. Like they have a pretty good offensive line. They're just like a quarterback away and someone who hopefully uses them appropriately.
Yeah, I think we've talked about it before, but I feel like that team is solid. They're just like I said, a quarterback away. And I agree with Wes. That would be awesome. A trade for Fields would be really cool. So I think they have a lot of options, a lot of ways they could go, which is going to be fun to watch.
What could I talk you into? What if they sign Gardner Minshew at quarterback and then they stay at 8 and they take Malik Neighbors to pair with Drake London and Kyle Pitts? Would that do anything for you?
Hey, I like it. I think it would be honestly, I think that would be solid. Not great, but I think it'd be solid. We already saw Minshew can help with some wide receivers, Pittman, so I think that would be pretty good. And I personally think Drake London, well, they're probably pretty similar, but I think Drake London could be a bit better than Pittman.
I think so too. I think he's a little bit bigger, a little bit faster.
Yeah. I mean, and I personally love Malik Neighbors, so that would be really cool. I used to love the Falcons, like when
did you?
Michael Vick was on the team. Yeah, I used to love. That was like my favorite team. I loved Michael Vick until he did all the dumb stuff, and so I just used to love the Falcons when I was younger.
I used to just love playing with the Falcons on Madden, so I could just run around with Michael Vick.
Exactly.
Moving on to the next coaching change, the Commanders parted ways with Ron Rivera after a few seasons, which they never could find their quarterback. So, and I think they're slot number 2, so they have the 102. They're almost certainly drafting a quarterback.
Yeah. So no surprise here. Yeah, no surprise. We heard about it, a couple weeks ago for sure, and I think it's good. I think there's going to be a lot of changes there. Recently, they brought in the I don't know if you saw this, but he used to be the Warriors general manager.
I did see that.
Yeah, I don't know his name off the top of my head, but that was super interesting to me. It's going to be, weird to see how he does in the football realm and kind of what he does. But it was weird, but also not surprising because of Magic Johnson being part of the ownership. So I don't know how much he has in decision making and things like that. But I think there's going to be a total overhaul there, and we all know that Sam Howell is not the guy. He did fine, but I don't. He's not.
We
They want
tapered
to.
off.
Yeah, really tapered off, and with the new ownership, they want to get their own guy in there.
For sure. I think new ownership, probably new GM, new head coach. They're not gonna, stick around with like I
Yeah,
think what did Hal go in like the 5th round a couple
fifth
years
or
ago. So
something like that.
yeah. Let's see what else. This one was kind of surprising. So the Tennessee Titans
Yeah,
fired Mike Vrabel, just 2 seasons removed from the playoffs. Where I think they were the first overall seed in the AFC. What, like 2 years ago?
2 or 3 years ago. Yeah,
And now it's like the mighty have fallen. So this one kind of
yeah.
took me off guard here.
That's what I was just gonna say. I was very surprised by this. I thought maybe they were gonna start to just kind of overhaul the team, not the actual coach, but maybe they just think Vrabel's not the guy for the team they have now. I know before when they were pretty solid, they had like a little bit of an older team. I think I don't know for sure, but I think more of an older team. And they traded AJ Brown. That was kind of to me the beginning of the end for them.
For sure.
And so I think I read something that they didn't like the way Vrabel spoke when he was talking when they had the game with the Patriots. I don't know if that was like a preseason game or something like that, but I don't.
Mm.
I just think that this is a mistake by the Titans, to be honest, because Vrabel is a really good coach. He puts a good product on the team. I think they just are missing a few pieces, and I personally think he's a good coach.
I think his biggest thing is he needed someone to handle the offense better than they had, and
Yeah,
they just didn't have the right personnel on offense. And
yeah,
you hit the nail on the head, right? Like I think trading away AJ Brown and drafting Treylon Burks was like the nail in the coffin.
yeah. I don't
Which
know how much he had a hand in that, which I doubt he really did, because I remember seeing
yeah,
a video of him just being like super upset when that happened. And so to me, I think he obviously is more of a defensive guy. So like you said, they needed somebody to run the offense well. I do think the mailman is pretty good. I think he'll be just fine. But
yeah.
I was very surprised by this. I agree.
I think they're in a good spot too. So they have the 7th overall pick. They're probably in a position where they can take a wide receiver or get some
Yeah.
help, get some youth in that offense to
Yep.
give Levis some weapons,
They'll probably get something boring and maybe get like an offensive line or something. Not good
which they
for
also need.
they
But
they
still,
need, yes, but for
yes.
us fantasy guys, that's why I would say it's boring. But it's probably
Oh,
good
for
for
sure.
the team per se.
It's always the worst when you start looking at
Yeah,
mock drafts and you're like, "Oh, where are all the receivers going?" And then like the real draft happens and it's like defensive lineman and O lineman.
yeah.
You're just like, "Well, that's fine too."
And then the wide receivers go to teams that we'll
That
talk about a
suck.
little bit later that
Yeah,
go to teams that already
exactly.
have good wide receivers and things like that. And it's like, oh man, okay,
I go to Baltimore again, where
yeah.
receivers go to die.
Although he
And
was
then
he was
yeah,
good.
Zay Flowers did good.
Yeah,
Last one here. This happened this morning. This one really caught me off guard. So the Seattle Seahawks decided to part ways with Pete Carroll, although not entirely. I think just for coaching.
yeah,
He got a front office job, right? If I remember
yep.
correctly. What do you
Something
what do
in
you
the
think about
off,
this one?
yeah.
This is kind of crazy.
So I was totally taken off guard as well. Like I thought he was still there, going to be still there. I thought I read something that he was coming back, and I know he's a little bit older,
He's
but I
72. I
just,
was just looking that up.
yeah, I just thought he was, secured. I mean, their team was solid this year. They had some downfalls, obviously, but this was the biggest surprise out of all of them. I know Vrabel was a surprise as well, but that team overall didn't do very well. So I think the Seahawks, like, they just kind of missed out on the playoffs. I think the Rams
Yeah,
did better than they should have, and so I just think this is the biggest of the firings of coaches. And I don't know if it's to me it seems like since he's staying in the front office, it seems like this is kind of his decision.
yeah,
I'm hoping his health is all good and things like that. I don't know if there's more things that are going to come out, but this was the biggest surprise.
yeah, for sure. I mean, you kind of touched on that, but they went 9-8 this year, so they just barely missed the playoffs. I think. I mean, just immediate reaction. This kind of feels like this might be the end for Geno Smith, right? Like,
Yeah,
I think his
That's what.
contract was in a way where they could potentially part ways with him this year, this offseason. And so
Yeah.
he didn't play very well. He had the nice Cinderella story last year, and then it seems like he kind of came crashing back down to earth a little bit. So
Yeah.
this might be.
He was definitely like just mediocre this year. I in some startups last year, I was like, oh sweet, I'm gonna kind of like ditch QB a bit. I'll get Geno Smith later on, and it's like, oh, I'm lucky on like two of the teams that I had. I still won the championship, and when I had him, but overall, it was just not a good fantasy year for him. And I think he was mediocre,
No.
but I think it's maybe going to be not an overhaul for that team, but I think it's going to be some big changes there.
Yeah, he was. So I was just looking up. He was QB 19 on the season. So I mean, pretty middle of the road. QB 2. So could be better, could be worse. I think we were just all expecting a little bit better, just based on what we did the year
Totally.
before.
Totally.
So
And
right now, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, and this will be something to watch, because they have good wide receivers. They have two good running backs. So it'll be like the QB is going to be interesting to see what happens in Seattle. I saw some mock that Penix maybe could go there. I think that was just kind of like a hyped up thing, like somebody from Seattle was writing it, or from Washington was writing it. But if you think about it, it'd be cool for him to learn behind Geno Smith, and I don't know if he has another year on his contract or whatever, but
He does. I was just
who
looking
knows?
at it.
So who knows what'll happen, but.
Yeah, Geno's cap hit next year is 33 million. It's only like 8.7 million dead cap if they were to
Cut him.
bail on it. So
yeah,
I mean, they could potentially move on if they want, but I don't know. I guess we'll see who they hire, if it's an internal or a external hire. I heard some rumors that Dan Quinn from the Cowboys could come back.
Yep,
He was
I saw that too.
He was a defensive coordinator for the Legion of Boom back in the day, so
Yeah,
that would make a
I
lot of
saw that.
sense. And then maybe they would keep Geno because defensive guys generally like to run a conservative offense, and they might fit into that still.
I personally don't think Dan Quinn's a very good head coach per se, but
Sure,
we don't need
he's
to
a really
get into
good D
that.
coordinator.
Yeah.
So that leaves us with 7 teams that have head coaching openings. So the Commanders, Panthers, who fired their coach midseason, the Falcons, the Raiders, who fired their coach midseason, Chargers, Brand Staley got fired after that Thursday Night Football shellacking, Titans and Seahawks. Which one of these jobs do you think is most appealing to people? I think,
probably just looking at it, I would say the Seahawks. I was going to say that the Chargers, but I think the Seahawks for sure. That's probably the most complete team they have there. If you want to, like you said, if someone like a Dan Quinn came in and they want to run a conservative offense, they could just keep Geno, and hopefully he, has a bit of a better year next year. But then honestly, I think after that would be the Falcons. But honestly, I'm going to say the Chargers because of Justin Herbert. And also they have a lot of good pieces on defense, but I just couldn't put it together, even though Brandon Staley was a defensive mind.
Yeah.
But they have really good pieces that the Chargers do. They need a running back now because I think they'll move on from, we'll get to it later, but I think they'll move on from Eckler. But they have the biggest piece. They have Justin Herbert, and Justin Herbert is really good. And then, I said before, the Falcons as well is nice because they need a quarterback, so that's tough, but they have everything else basically.
Yeah, I think the Falcons is the name that I brought up too. The Chargers obviously is appealing just because they have Herbert, but the thing with them is they are 34 million over the cap next year, so they might need a little bit of voodoo to get the rest of that roster in shape.
Well, I think they just paid everybody for defense and thought they were going to be really good, and it all went crashing down.
Yeah, that was a horrendous season. But I heard a rumor today that it sounds like Jim Harbaugh is the favorite to come from Michigan to take on the Chargers job, which would be interesting.
Yeah, I think that would be another bummer for him because he's coming. I think that team needs a couple years, to be honest.
Yeah, and I mean they have that franchise. I mean we've talked about it a little bit.
Yeah,
that franchise just has problems.
Yep.
They're going back to Philip Rivers and Drew Brees before that. So
yeah, another team I was kind of thinking that has I don't know, depending what they do with Devontae Adams, but I think the Raiders have a really good defense. I knew you would like this, but they have a really good defense and they have some good pieces on offense as well. I think Antonio Pierce should get that job, but I
I
just
hope
feel
so.
like,
I really hope
eh,
so.
yeah, I feel like they have some. Obviously, they're like same thing, a couple, maybe like a year or two away, but I still think that overall they have some good pieces on offense and defense.
I think the big thing for them is they need a quarterback. Aiden O'Connell's
Yep.
not
No.
it. I mean, he was fine, kind of.
Yeah.
I mean,
No.
they found ways to win with him, but it was not because of him. It was in spite of him. So,
Yep,
um,
correct. I think their defense is was holding them up, and he's just kind of like a bridge. I think the best way to describe him is like a bridge quarterback. Just get him through the season, and then once I can get somebody, um, somebody posted a mock in the Discord today, and I don't it had the Raiders jumping all the way up to number one and taking Caleb Williams.
oh baby,
But
depending on what we had to trade away to
yeah,
get
that's
that, I'd be all for it. So that's a long way to move up though from 13 to one. So
yes.
that way,
Yep, that's what people said in the Discord as well. It's like it was just a picture of it, so I wasn't able to like figure out what like the I'll have to look at the mock and see what the trades were like what they had to give up to get up there. But that's a big jump, like you said, and I think they'd have to pay a lot.
honestly, I'd rather try to deal with the Bears to get Justin Fields and let them keep the 101
Yeah,
and
right.
not take,
Yeah.
but we
There's
shall
some
see.
there's some appealing places for Fields if he doesn't stay in Chicago for sure.
Yeah, for sure. I do think Chicago keeps him though, especially because it sounds like they're keeping Eberflus,
Yeah.
which I don't entirely understand the logic behind that one. But the GM
Yeah.
and him appear to be staying, so I think they're the ones that drafted Fields, so I would assume that they're gonna keep
Yeah.
riding.
Keep him.
But
Yeah.
well, let's get into some disappointing players. So we kind of talked about the Seahawks a little bit ago, but one of theirs was their first round wide receiver they took last year in Jackson Smith and Jigba. He is his stat line this year. He had 63 receptions, 628 yards, and 4 touchdowns. He was pretty much unanimously the wide receiver 1 in rookie drafts this offseason. He's still hanging on at wide receiver 18 on FantasyCalc, so his value hasn't taken a huge hit, but he really disappointed. And I found a tweet earlier that I wanted to share. So for the last 5 years, the only wide receivers who went in their first round of the NFL draft that didn't deliver a top 12 week in the rookie season was N'Keal Harry, Jalen Reagor, Henry Ruggs, Rashad Bateman, Jameson Williams, and then from this year, JSN and Quentin Johnston. So not exactly great company to be in.
Yeah, that's not. I saw when you posted that in our chat that I was like, oh, that is not a good group to be a part of for sure. And I know a lot of people were like, even though they drafted him where he was, people were kind of like, okay, let's. I think it will take some time for him to get up to speed or whatever, and it's mainly because Tyler Lockett was there. But I personally
Sure.
thought, even though Tyler Lockett was there, I thought JSN was good enough to kind of make his own way, right? And I think the biggest stat that you have highlighted here is his yards per route run is 1.32, which is outrageous. Like it is, that's not very
Horrible.
good. Yeah.
Yeah.
I felt like they started using him a bit better by the last couple weeks.
Sure.
But it didn't really produce much, right? I mean, he had a couple of big touchdowns, like grabs that I think is kind of inflating a bit of his numbers a little bit. 63 receptions is okay, but having a yard per route run of 1.3 is obviously not going to produce that many yards.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, he's a guy that, a slot guy that's going to be able to pick up some yak. So maybe that yard per route run is okay, but he needs to be put in better positions for him to get some more yards after the catch.
For sure. Yeah, I don't think they used them correctly, and maybe that'll change with the new coaching staffs they bring in. I think there's that thing. There's a narrative you can spin here of yes, he struggled, but he was kind of he played third fiddle to DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett. It was Geno Smith arguably had one of his worst seasons as a starter. They ran the ball quite a bit. Like they were on a run first offense, and then he was the third passing option. So
Yeah.
you can spin yourself a narrative that it's like, well, there's 63 receptions for 600 yards and 4 TDs. Like, I don't know. We've done this before with receivers who are disappointed. You can talk yourself into things, but it's a little worrisome
Totally.
too, just because he had that one monster year at Ohio State and then didn't play his junior season. and then he comes back and does this. I mean, are you worried at all? Like, I mean, if you drafted him last year, you probably were drafting like the 105 spot, 106 maybe.
Yeah.
Are you holding on to him? Are you trying to sell him? Are you trying to buy on the cheap? Like, what are we doing with JSN?
So I don't think I'm not going to buy. The reason is because I saw that as well, Ron. If he was faster than Ron, he'd be better. Hey, Ron. So I don't think people are going to trade him for like anything cheaper, right? He's still QB 18 on FantasyCalc. He's still a top 20 ranked wide receiver. So to me, his price is going to be high still, and especially because guys are going to be like, well, I think Tyler Lockett will be on the way out. If you have him, Tyler Lockett will be on his way out. New coach, maybe new quarterback. But to me, overall, I just think, I don't know if the team wasn't using him in the right way or it's a JSN issue, right? I would like to look into a little bit more and see maybe. But I was trying to pull up the game by game stats, and I don't know where I can do that.
It's not pretty. I can tell you.
That's what I wanted to. Yeah, that's what I wanted to see. Is like, because I'm pretty sure,
it's
like most of his. Oh, here we go. Most of his touchdowns came at like the end of the season. Oh no, they're just sprinkled in through all, and so he averaged basically 10 yards a game. Whoa, that's not good. 10 yards a catch, excuse me.
Yeah. Okay. I was gonna say, I was like, I need to check my math there. But yeah, I mean, he went. I guess his high yardage mark was 63 yards, and he did it twice. He had a couple 62s and 61s in there. Like, very middling numbers. Like, that's like wide receiver 3 numbers, which I guess makes sense because that's what he was. But if so, let's say I think he was going right around the 105, 106 last year. Straight up in this year's draft, if you had the 108. 109, would you take that for JSN and roll the dice with one of these receivers, or are you gonna stay put? Because this year's receiver class looks really good. Like, just for context, that would be like Xavier Worthy from Texas, Troy Franklin, Emeka Ibuka, Brian Thomas Jr. I think
I'm gonna keep JSN, but
I think I'm gonna roll the dice.
Yeah, but
one of those receivers.
But so if I had to pick right now, I'd stay with JSN. But if I can wait after the draft, right? Before, like say it's right before rookie drafts, and I can actually figure out where the team or where the players are going, then I probably would have a better decision. But if I had to pick right now, I think I'm going with JSN.
That's fair. I mean, let's assume Lockett and DK are back next year. Do we expect anything different from JSN, or do you think this is going to be what he does until Lockett's gone?
I personally think it's probably going to be what he does until Lockett is actually gone. Which then, if now that I think about it, I probably want to roll the dice and get somebody fresh.
Right. I know.
He's going to be a tough one, right? I don't think I have too many shares of him, thankfully, but it's like, I don't know. I think a lot of people were banking on Lockett leaving.
Well, and what's his ceiling, JSN, really? Like, he's not going to be a wide receiver 1. Like, I think he could be like a high end wide receiver 2, so he could probably be like a wide receiver like 15, 16 in Dynasty, right? Like,
that's exactly what I was thinking that his ceiling is. And so I think, but part of me thinks I think somebody like a Worthy, if he gets into the right spot, could possibly be a wide receiver 1, because I think he has that upside. But somebody like a Troy Franklin, I think he's going to be more of a wide receiver 2.
Kind of boat.
Yeah. So I don't know. That one's tough.
Yeah, something to monitor for sure in the offseason.
Absolutely.
Moving on to another disappointing rookie. This one really hurt Bryce Young, because you probably spent like 102, 103 on this guy. His rookie season. So just for context, I think we all know he was bad, but his rookie season points per game was only 11.65 points, which is pretty awful. So for context, guys who were better than that in their rookie season, Aiden O'Connell, Deshaun Kaiser, Zach Wilson, Kenny Pickett, Mitch Trubisky. The only one that he was actually better than was Dwayne Haskins, which I mean, he was horrible. So he went over 300 passing yards one time against the Packers towards the end of the season. So there's a little bit of hope there. And then he threw multiple touchdowns in only 2 games. So I mean, this was pretty horrendous. Like there was not a lot to like there.
I think what hurts the most is a lot of time. I think many people took Bryce Young over CJ Stroud. I don't think anybody figured CJ Stroud would be as good as he was. I don't think anybody thought that.
No.
I'm sure there's somebody, but the majority of the fantasy community did not think CJ Stroud would be as good as he is. So taking that out of the account, but I just think 11.65 points per game is not good. The Panthers weren't giving him any favors by bringing in or not bringing in any wide receivers and having nobody really good, but we can't. We got to put some blame on Bryce Young. I would have liked to see a little bit more, progression, for the lack of a better word, and see him actually getting a little bit better, maybe even towards the end of the season. So to me, I'm completely out on Bryce Young. Right, I think he could possibly be out of the league in after the next year if he doesn't produce. I think it will really depend on who comes in as the coach.
What? So I mean, yeah, I agree 100%. I'm pretty out on him as well. But I mean, if you drafted him, you probably spent like a top 3 pick, a dynasty pick on him. So your team is probably also garbage again this year. You probably have a pretty high pick. What are we trying to get out on him? Like, and what does that look like to get out on Bryce Young?
So I would not, because I personally don't think, but there still is a possibility he could turn it around and be a mediocre quarterback, right? And so right now, if you're I think it's a possibility. Like I said, I don't think there's much hope, but I think there's still a possibility.
Because here's my thing with Bryce Young, right? So he had a horrible situation around him. Like I was just pulling up PFF's pass blocking grade for Carolina. They were 6th worst, so they were pretty awful. They traded away the farm to get him. He wasn't what they wanted. The offensive line's terrible. They have no weapons. And now they don't have really a draft pick, right? I think their first pick is the first pick of the 2nd round. So how does the situation get better for him to start looking better?
That's a tough question. I just think there's a very big, it's not very good, but I think there's a chance that he could progress and get a little bit better, right? And if you're going to trade him right now, you're going to take a humongous hit, right? I probably don't think people are going to buy him for a late 1st or early 2nd, right?
You might be able to, and I think if you can, I think I would do it. If I could get any first for him, I think I would take it.
Yeah,
I was just looking at what JB has him ranked as equivalent to the 108 right now. So that's what I was.
Okay,
and I think honestly, if I get that, I'm.
Yeah, I would take it as well. Yeah, I would take it as well. It's just that's a bummer that you lost, but that's not that much of a loss, is what I was thinking in my head. Is like
about a half round. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I just don't know if there's people that really think he's going to get better. Like I just am saying there's a possibility, but I personally don't think it's going to happen.
Well, because on the flip side of that, right? If you can say you want to sell him, but is anyone going to buy him, right? Like, what's the most you'd be willing to acquire for him? Because I think I'm all the way out on him, where I'm not touching it.
I don't want to acquire him. I'd rather get a Baker, get somebody that's
same.
Right? I'd rather get somebody that just will hold me over if my team is, and if I have him, I'm probably, my team's not very good, so I need a total overhaul, right? And so maybe I'll just keep him and hopefully he's not good again, and then I get another good pick in 25,
sure.
and then maybe it's a total.
Yeah, if you have to start him again this year, you're probably going to end up with a top, 4 pick next year again
Yes.
too, and you probably have one again this year.
Yes.
So
Yeah. So and not a lot of times there like you would always hope like I had one rebuild where I went from last to first, right? That's not always going to happen. I had like a ton of
is that the
picks.
one you beat me in
Um,
this year?
yeah, I had
Yeah,
a ton of picks, and so
nice.
that's not
Yeah,
always going to happen. But so a lot of times it takes maybe a year or two, and so depending on where your team is. So say you're in the middle, I would be shopping and trying to maybe get that late first or early second.
yeah, I think so too. If I could get any kind of a first for him, 24 or 25, I think I'm
Or
I'm
get
selling
like
it,
a
no question asked. Yeah,
obviously, I don't know like if a Baker owner would want to be like, oh, maybe I can get Bryce Young and he's gonna
yep,
do well or whatever. But if you can get a Baker plus, like I would do that as well.
yeah,
Like if Bryce Young is your second quarterback and you have a top quarterback as your QB1, like just told me it totally depends on team. But I'm with you. I'm out on Bryce Young.
yeah. That's unfortunate. Sometimes these quarterbacks don't always hit, which
Yep.
um um. So moving on to another disappointing rookie, Michael Mayer. He was probably like universally the tight end 2, right behind Dalton Kincaid and kind of in
Yep.
that same range as like Sam Laporta last year. And then judging by how well Sam Laporta did, and even Dalton Kincaid for rookie tight end standards, Michael Mayer disappointed. He only went over 50 yards once. Now, granted, we kind of just talked about this a little bit ago. Like the Raiders were a mess. They fired their head coach. Their offense was horrendous. He had 27 catches on the year, 304 yards, 2 touchdowns. He did miss quite like I think 4 games towards the end of the year,
Yeah.
so he didn't play the full season. But well, I mean, what are we thinking here? Are you hanging on to Michael Mayer? Or you trying to cut bait? Are you trying to buy
I'm
low on the cheap?
He's somebody that I want to buy. I was just looking at
Okay.
JB's tiers, and right now he has him in that 2.01 to 2.07 range. And I
Hmm,
think I totally would buy at that range. And I think it's
sure.
because there's not really any like there's obviously Brock Bowers, but after Brock Bowers, there's Jatavian Sanders, but I don't, he's whatever. But I just think he's in tier 5 for the tight ends. But I do think if they get a quarterback, meaning the Raiders, I think Michael Mayer could really take some big strides next year. Right, stays on the field. I know he's a good pass blocker,
Hmm.
and so I just think that's going to keep him on the field. And so I'm somebody that I really liked him coming out of college.
Same.
And it does take time for tight ends, but this year I think a lot of people feel like, oh, what the heck, because we had Laporta, we had Kincaid, and that we don't typically have that. So I think
Right.
if say we didn't have those two guys, we wouldn't have this same, I think, narrative for Michael Mayer. I think he would just be like he did like he was a rookie tight end. Um, I do see that JB has him under Musgrave,
Okay.
and I would take
Oh,
Mayer over Musgrave for sure.
sorry, I think my internet was cutting out there for a second.
Oh, good.
What I was saying was I think the only reason people were disappointed in Michael Mayer is just because he went around Sam Laporta. And if you took
Yep.
Mayer in front of Laporta, who I think put up he was a tight end 1 this year,
Yep.
you're gonna be pretty upset, right? Like that you
Yeah.
missed out on that. But
Hundred
I
percent.
think there was like if you watch, like I feel like Mayer had some moments, like he had some nice like touchdown grabs. He got involved a little bit more towards the end of the season. He had a few nice games. He had some nice grabs. Like you can see like the talents there. It's just the situation was bad, and hopefully there are better days ahead for him. So I think I mean, would you pay an early second for him, assuming you like earned that early second and your team is bad, or are you just gonna try to hold off?
I th- I think I would. It depends if I. Yeah, I'm gonna stand for him and say I would, because I think you're gonna get some upside with Michael Mayer, right? I usually the early second. This draft is pretty deep at wide receiver, but the one thing is I do think some of those wide receivers are gonna get pulled up because there's not any running backs. So I
Mhm.
think and after Bowers, I think Michael Mayer would be the second best tight end this year. right? And so
Yeah.
I feel comfortable moving a early second for Michael Mayer.
I do too. I think there's a lot of room for improvement. I think this next year will be pretty telling for him. I think it's either going to be he's going to pan out and you're going to be super stoked that you have him, or the bottom's going to fall out and then you're going to be like, well, crap, now I'm stuck with a dead asset.
Yeah,
So,
and then if say you move an early second, like that doesn't always pan out, but
sure.
maybe
The-
you never know.
yeah, no, I don't think an early second's too big of like a. It's not gonna if you know ship off an early second for Mayor and he busts, like you're not. It's not gonna like sink your team.
Yeah, agreed. Hopefully you have an extra second, and boom, there you
Yes.
go.
All right. So let's hit another rookie, and then let's move into some bets here. But Quentin Johnston, he was a first round wide receiver. He went to the Chargers. Yeah, hey, I mean, he was drafted around the same as like Dalton Kincaid, Zay Flowers. He went ahead of,
Yep.
uh, kind of right behind Jordan Addison and a lot of rookie drafts last year. Going into the season, I think Quentin Johnston, we all thought like, oh, he was in a great situation. They brought in a new coordinator in Kellen Moore. He's got a great quarterback in Justin Herbert. And then like he had a kind of a built-in excuse of, well, he's kind of behind Keenan Allen and Mike Williams, so he might be third fiddle on that offense, but he has a great situation. And then Mike Williams got hurt super early in the year. Keenan Allen missed time. And Quentin Johnston did nothing. Like,
Nothing.
dude,
Yep.
they were calling dudes off from like their couch at home who came in and played ahead of them. So what the heck happened with Quentin Johnston? Is he just a bust?
Part of me thinks he is. I mean, there's times in the beginning of the draft, like leading up to the draft last year, I was like big on Quentin Johnston, and then before the draft, I was like, you know what, I'm going to hold off a bit because I don't know for sure.
Uh-huh.
And then he got drafted pretty good, like draft capital. Then he got he, on the Chargers, like, oh wow, that's a good landing spot because we Mike Williams and Keenan Allen always get injured. And then in preseason, he had a bunch of drops, and so I just think part of me thinks he's a bust for sure. And if you can't beat out wide receivers that are just off the practice squad and guys that just Josh Palmer and Guyton and guys like that, it's like, come on. So I'm lucky. It's lucky that I didn't take too many shares of him. I know that like he was going at the back end of the first, like 9 through 11 or 8 through 10. So I don't know if you can't beat out those guys. That's to me that's not good.
Would you take Quentin Johnston or Jacoby Myers?
Jacoby Myers.
Johnston or Jahan Dotson?
Dotson.
Johnston or JMO?
Whew. JMO.
I'll do one more here. Quentin Johnston or
He froze.
oh, okay. Quentin Johnston or Romeo Dubs?
I'll take Dobbs.
Yeah, I think so too. So JB has Quentin Johnston in like the late second, early third range. So I was just
honestly, if I could get a late second for him, I'll take the second because there's some upside. Yeah,
he's gone.
Yeah, there's some upside to whoever's going to land there, and some of those guys JB has there are like Penix, Jonathan Brooks, Trey Benson, Estime, Leggett. Like I even would take Tez Walker over him. So it's like there's
just try again.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay, let's move into some of the vets here. I'm going to skip down a little bit. The one guy I wanted to talk about was Austin Eckler. Is he just done? I mean, he's a little bit older. He dropped a full yard in yards per carry from 4.5 to 3.5. His touchdowns, he had 20 touchdowns back-to-back years. He came all the way down to 6. Like, and on top of that, he just looked bad. Like, is he done, or do you think he just had a bad year? Because the Chargers just were awful.
Yeah, we could go with the easy answer and say, okay, the Chargers were just a bad team overall. But when we watched him play, he, like you said, he looked bad. He looked like he was running through
Hmm.
mud, right? And
Hmm.
I don't I'm not going to stick to that number of 20-6, right? Because overall that team didn't do very well, and like the last 2 years prior, the team was really good, scoring a lot of points.
Sure.
And the Chargers couldn't score this year to save their life. And then, on top of that, Herbert was out. So, but I do think going from 4.4 to 3.5 is big.
Yeah.
And that just kind of shows like we thought, like we said, like kind of running through mud and not looking any good. I think age is catching up to him. I think there's a lot of things happening here, and I don't think he's the same. I think a lot of times running backs, like the age cliff we talk about, right? And I think for him, the age is catching up to him a lot quicker than some of those other running backs.
Hmm. Yeah, he's gonna be 29 going into next season. And I mean, there's a couple runs if you watched him where he was like wide open, like years previous he would have scored. He was
Yep,
running through open grass, and like I think a defensive lineman caught him from behind, which I mean, it's never,
not good.
never,
That's
never,
not good.
right?
Yeah, and so if you have him, he's going to die on your roster. I think you're not going to be able to get
Yeah,
anything for him. You're going to need to wait until he has a if he gets a job next year. I don't think he's going to go the same route of like as a Dalvin Cook. I mean that might just be me hoping, but I think somebody will grab him. Like a playoff team that needs a running back, and I think he'll be like a second running back on a team. That could be a change of pace guy,
sure.
and I don't think that's unfortunately though. I think he's going to want more, right? And I think for us, it's easy for us to say, hey, he's going to be that change of pace guy, but he probably still thinks he's really good and it's going to be that main guy. And so it will be interesting to see. Is he still under contract?
No, he's a free agent next year.
Free agent, yeah. So we'll see. I think there's a couple of good landing spots. Like just me being a fan, I think it'd be cool to see him on someone like the Rams, somebody like
Mm,
even like the Raiders, right? Josh Jacobs and him.
don't
Like
don't do that
yeah.
to me.
So
Don't do that to me.
just saying, just saying. So it'd be there's some good landing spots for him. Somebody like Dallas, the Cowboys, right? They need a
Sure,
second running back. So there's some good for me
that'd
being
be
a fan.
interesting
There's some
actually.
good landing spots for him.
No, that would actually be really interesting. Him and Dallas. I think him and
Yeah,
Pollard are kind of similar backs, and
they
they
are.
they
Yeah,
both,
they are a
yeah.
bit.
But
So
yeah,
that's why I was thinking like, well, also even Kyron Williams and him are kind of similar, like because Kyron catches a lot of
yeah.
passes, but Josh Jacobs, he's more of that,
Well, Jacob is a free agent too, though, so
yeah,
he might not be back in Vegas. It might
yep,
be Zamir White and Eckler, which, oof,
okay,
I don't know.
yeah, I wouldn't do that to you.
Yeah, that's ugly. Um,
Um, let's do one other running back here because I think there's a lot of people
yeah.
that were on him in startups in the offseason. Miles Sanders, my goodness.
Oof,
I know that the Panthers are really, really bad, but he was even
he was
worse. Like
cooked.
he was really bad. And I don't want to say like Chuba Hubbard is like this. He's a solid running back, but if you're gonna
He's
get
fine.
outplayed by Chuba Hubbard, you're to me you're done. I know there was a lot of people that were, I think me included, that were in on Miles Sanders. Like, oh, that's a good landing spot. It should be a good running
Mhm.
back for Bryce Young. Like we thought, oh, the the coach is going to use him well. Just though everything went wrong.
No, that was a disaster.
Yep.
He just, I mean, Chuba Hubbard wasn't like setting the world on fire or anything, and like,
No.
I know sometimes too, like yards per carry can get like overlooked at, but within the same team, I think it's fine. So Chuba Hubbard averaged 3.8 yards per carry. Miles Sanders on the same team, got the same offensive line, 3.3. So it was just bad. Like,
Yep.
and
bad all around.
He looked bad, and I think the thing too that we were counting on a lot for fantasy was we were thinking Miles Sanders was going to get a ton of like checkdowns from
Yep.
Bryce Young, and that didn't happen. And then the running lanes weren't there. He looked like, I don't want to say he was disinterested, but he just didn't look like he had the same juice that he had in Philadelphia the year prior. So
100%.
something wasn't. I don't know if it was like mentally he just wasn't there, if he wasn't a good fit for the offense, or just too much dysfunction. But it was bad. But that being said, they paid him a decent amount of money, so he should be back next year. Depending on the coaching, are we expecting a bounce back from Miles Sanders, or do we think is he done though?
I need to see it. I think he's donezo, but I mean, he's somebody that probably could come back from the dead, right? And so it's possible.
He's
But I
basically
just,
free.
yeah, he's free right now. So if you have him, personally, I would just keep him, right? Unless somebody wants to give you a third for him, like I guess I'd take that third. But I think it's possible that he can come back and be okay. But I personally think he's dead.
Yeah, I mean he's like free. Like you
Yeah,
can, I think any third gets him. And if
for
you're a
sure.
contender, I mean, would you like that late third? You want to take a lottery ticket on one of these rookies? I mean, you might end up with a Puka Nakua, but you might end up with just like a pile of garbage too. So like,
Yeah.
I don't know. I think maybe take a shot on the guy you've seen it from, right? Like if you're a
Yep.
contender, this running back class isn't great. Like maybe see if he gets a second wind with a new coaching staff in Carolina. Maybe Bryce Young turns it around a little bit. I don't know.
Yeah, because I still think he can. If Bryce Young ever checks the ball down, I still think that's going to be his
Mhm.
upside, right? But I don't know. I'm not going out and buying him. If I have him, if I can get a third for him, I'll take it. If not, I'll just keep him.
I think he's worth the risk. And like if
Yes.
you were a playoff team, send your third, like, because really what are you risking? Like that third round pick's probably not going to hit anyways. Like I don't know, like what the hit rate on these third round picks are, especially late. It's
Yep.
usually not very good.
Yeah. Surprisingly, there's a couple this year, but you never know. Like it's totally
Yeah.
it's totally a crapshoot. So like just if you have them, keep them, especially if you're a playoff team, because like we said, I think it's a possibility he gets a second wind, comes back from the dead, and if not, you're not really losing out on much.
Because I mean, really, or sorry, not Eckler. I had his page pulled up. Miles Sanders isn't that old yet. Like I think he's only
No,
like 26. Let's
let's
see.
see here.
Yeah, he's 26. He'll be 27 at the start of next year. So I think
Yeah,
he's
that's
still, if it was a
that's
motivation problem and not a talent fall off, like he still has another year or two where he could produce
yeah,
for you. So I think there's enough there that I could talk myself back into him.
yeah. If I have them, I'm keeping them unless I can get that third and my team, needs some, I need something. But if like most likely you're gonna have them and your team is like a playoff team, um, unless you waited on running back. Say you had a startup last year, you waited on running back and you got him as your running back second or running back two, excuse me.
Mhm.
Then you're hurting.
Oh yeah, then you're in a rough way.
Yep.
Um, let's talk about a couple of receivers here who had similar seasons. So Terry McLaurin and Chris Godwin, they're listed back to back on FantasyCalc at wide receiver 35 and 36 respectively.
Yep.
They both had over 1,000 yards. I think the thing that they lacked really were touchdowns. McLaurin had 4, whereas Godwin only had 2, and kind of took a backseat to Mike Evans. These guys, I think McLaurin in particular, were waiting on a quarterback for Scary Terry. Chris Godwin, Mike Evans might be gone, so it might be the Godwin show. Are we gonna buy into the dip here on these two for a bounce back in 2024?
So I don't think I would buy Chris Godwin because I
Okay.
do think people are a little worried about him. He I feel like the narrative on him is like he doesn't really get the touchdowns that other wide receivers do, but he just does pick up a lot of yards.
Yeah.
And I do like what I saw from Baker. And so I think if Mike Evans is on his way out, I do think something good is in store for Chris Godwin. With Terry McLaurin, I think I would just. It's going to be hard to buy him because I don't think people are going to want to sell him for what he like is probably worth. Like I was getting a couple offers for him, and I was getting a second. And to me, I feel like I'd rather just keep Terry McLaurin than get a second. And I think that second was like mid. And so I still think with obviously a really good wide receiver class coming in, I still think he's better than like the back half of those early, or excuse me, that first round wide receivers, because he's like produced, and they're gonna have a new. I do know that Sam Howell was a solid fantasy put up yards, and he targeted McLaurin a lot. He got 1,000 yards, but maybe that new quarterback results in touchdowns, right? So if McLaurin had 2 more touchdowns, he's probably in the early 20s of your fantasy calc, I bet.
Sure. That's the thing. He's never really scored. I was just pulling up his career stat line. The highest total of touchdowns he's ever had in a season was 7, and that was back in his rookie season. He's been 4, 5, 5, 4. And
And I
he's
think,
always kind of hovered right around that 80 to 90 reception mark too. So he's
yep.
just
And I think
kind of a tuner. Yeah.
And I think Godwin's about the same way.
Mm-hmm.
Has never really gotten like a ton of touchdowns. He's usually just gotten put up good yardage. And so I just think that they're going to probably continue. But if a new quarterback comes in for the Commanders, if Evans goes on his way out, I think Godwin can get a couple more touchdowns, and then it's a different narrative for Godwin for 100%. And same with McLaurin if he gets a couple more touchdowns.
That's fair. For me, I'm having a hard time with those two in particular because I think their value, like their actual value that they should warrant kind of like a back end first round pick. But if you're going to actually like sell, you're probably only going to get like an early second. And so the thing there too is that like if they at this point, like if they are who they are and they're only getting like 5-6 touchdowns and about 1,000 yards, like are they really helping you get over the hump to win a championship? I mean, I guess if they're like a depth piece as like a flex option,
that's kind of what I
or
was.
are you better off just like taking one a shot one of these like rookies at the back end of the first round, early second? And it's like maybe I hit a I don't know, like a wide receiver 2, as opposed to like a 3.
So I think it really depends on like how your depth is on your team, because to me those two guys are what help you kind of win a championship, right? If you have like 3, so say it's a start 3 or start 4, and he's your 4th wide receiver, you're in a good position. Or you have 3 really good wide receivers, and you're maybe one of your flex positions, right? And you're in a good spot there. And so to me, if I could move off of him and get someone like a Josh Downs or even like a Christian Kirk because he's injured, I think I would do that, because I think there's upside to both Josh Downs and Christian Kirk. Christian Kirk, I think obviously is like that 1B, but he gets the touchdowns. Josh Downs, we'll see with Anthony Rich. Yeah, I like Josh Downs a lot as well, and I think Anthony Richardson has a good rapport with him. And so I just, those are 2 guys that are right around, like Godwin is wide receiver 35, Downs is 36, McLaurin's 37, and Christian Kirk is 38, right? So you're looking at guys that maybe you could go a straight swap. Somebody's like, oh, I think Godwin is going to have a better season. Give me Josh Downs, and that's a good swap. But all those guys that we're talking about, I think those are guys that you're hoping are going to be your depth pieces, not your second, third wide receiver.
Yeah, I feel like if the cost to acquire is a late first, early second on both those guys, I think I'm just going to take a shot on the rookies. Just because I've seen what they are. But
I'm with you. Like with McLaurin, he doesn't get the touchdowns. We've seen it, right? He only had the most his rookie season, and since then, I think the most he's had was 5, right? And so he's just a yardage guy, and Godwin is the same thing. So I I don't know. Part of me now that we're talking about it, you're talking me into maybe taking an early second for one of them and hoping to get a guy that falls a little bit and gets a good landing spot in the draft and then boom.
Yeah, it's one of those things where you can always talk yourself into the grass is always greener
Yeah.
kind of situation, right? So
Yeah. And I think it with both those guys, it really depends on where your team is at. If your team is if you were in the playoffs and those are depth pieces, then in my opinion, keep those guys.
yeah, I mean, uh, the risk is always that too is that like if you trade that late first, you end up with a Quentin Johnston who does nothing for you.
Yes.
Whereas you
Yep.
do know McLaurin and Godwin are pretty safe, right?
Yeah, they're still going to get you that 10 to
they're not
12
going to screw
points.
you over, right? They'll get you a
Yeah.
nice floor. So
Yeah.
let's talk about one last guy here, T. Higgins. So he is a free agent this upcoming off season. He had a horrendous season, 42 receptions, 656 yards, 5 touchdowns. He's still the wide receiver 14 on FantasyCalc. So T. Higgins, we talked about this last year. He's one of those guys where his dynasty value has always been higher than anything he's ever produced. Now, granted, this year I think there's that narrative you could tell yourself that Joe Burrow got hurt
Yep.
and so T. Higgins struggled. But I mean, what are we doing? Like, how many years can we have T. Higgins not produce and still keep him at a high value? Like, are you trying to sell and just get out of this and just try to find something else,
Yeah.
or are you gonna buy in
So
one more time?
I'm hoping. So I think it was you and I the last beginning of the season, maybe August, end of July. Me and you were doing a lot of Ayuk for Higgins or Ayuk
Mhm.
plus, and I'm still on that. Right, like if you can get out of Higgins, get out of Higgins. And I think now with his, I think someone's gonna be like, ooh, he's gonna go and be a wide receiver one somewhere, or ooh, he's gonna be a 1B somewhere. And I just think he always misses a few games. He
Yep.
always, is ranked higher than, like you said, ranked higher than what he produces. I kind of think this is who he is, right?
Yeah.
We've seen it year after year. There are guys that are ranked a little bit lower, maybe, but actually produce better, in my opinion. I do
For
know
sure.
that, like someone like Ayuk was very up and down this year, but I just think somebody like Ayuk, I believe, has a better floor than Higgins because
Yeah.
Higgins does have a lot of donuts or couple points.
Higgins or Michael Pittman
Pittman,
for sure. Higgins or DJ Moore.
DJ Moore,
Higgins or DK Metcalf.
oh Metcalf easily.
Higgins or Puka.
So I talked about this before, but that could be. I feel like Higgins might be a good move off
Really? I thought that
of
was an
Puka.
easy one for you.
No, so I I love Puka more than anybody, but I'm gonna say it now. I am worried. I don't know what's gonna happen. Say the Rams play really well in the playoffs, and I worry because I think the coach could be out at any time. I just worry. I worry about Puka without Cooper Cup is not playing as well. I worry. And so if I can get somebody that I think, I personally think Puka is just like a darling this year. I think I struggle because I could see some bad things happening next year.
Interesting. Your Puka faith is
Yeah,
is is
it's
waning.
yeah, it is, and I
Makes
I
me
don't know.
sad.
It's I know it's I just I just worry with it. He doesn't have the draft capital. He just, I worry.
Okay, I get that. I think one thing that I might want to try to explore doing this offseason is moving T Higgins for Tank Dell and then getting a plus for Tank Dell. I
Yeah,
think this could
I
be my
like that.
new Ayuk plus
I like
that
that a
I'm
lot.
gonna explore.
Yeah,
But
so I'm still on that. If I have T Higgins, I'd move him. And I think it'd probably be really hard for me to hit that accept if I say I got that straight 1-for-1 Higgins for Puka. I'd probably have a really hard time doing that.
I'm taking
But
Puka for the record
Y
there.
yeah, so that's what I mean. I just would have a hard time, but I'm I'm putting a stamp on it now. It's like I did before. Puka was my guy, but I do worry about him next year.
Fair enough. All right. I think we've said it all. Holler, do you have any parting thoughts before we get out of here?
No, just go Rams in the playoffs. Let's do it.
You can say that because Ron's not here.
That's right. I would have said it even when he was here.
Fair enough. All right, guys. We'll catch you on the next one. See ya.
Thanks. Peace.